It's time to get nerdy, y'all.
A little bit of gaming history for you.
Something relevant in gaming and discuss our opinions on it.
Should we kick it out of here, or should we kick-start it?
This is the part where you, the listeners, try to stump the hosts.
I'm not a lawyer. I just play one on a podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's Tuesday, August 13th, 2024, and you know what that means. It's time to get nerdy, y'all. Welcome to episode number 314. It's the Pie episode of Two Nerds in a Pod, the nerdiest video game podcast in the galaxy. I am Lum, also known as Mr. Nice Guy, and I am joined by my bestie, my comrade in gaming commentary, the Miggity Mac, also known as Maction, also known as potential 4-time in a row podcast award winner for games and hobbies. Mac, how are you, buddy?
I'm doing great, and with that as an introduction, yes, the rumors are true. Perhaps you have heard the short introduction that we posted last week, but just in case you haven't, you really should, and you should share it with everybody. But we are once again finalists for the Games and Hobbies category, as well as Best Black Hosted Podcast as well. And so if the powers that be find us worthy, we shall have a fourth win of the Games and Hobbies and a second win of Best Black Hosted. Of course, it's been a few years since we were finalists in that category before. But yeah, no, I'm doing good, man. We got a chance to talk a little bit when we recorded that brief intro.
This weekend, we did.
Yeah, but it has, apart from that, it's been a couple of weeks. How have you been? Anything exciting?
Been a couple of days, correct. And yeah, there has been a couple exciting things. So probably the highlight of this past weekend is I went out on a mini road trip. I won't even call it a road trip. I'll call it a drive with a friend of mine, Tiankum, who is a friend of the show and listener of the show, and we did some retro game shopping. And there's this really, really cool store about an hour north of where I live called Press Start Games. I had gone there on the way back from a trip with my family a few weeks ago. It was great service, great selection, and the owner said we're having our 9th anniversary sale beginning of August, first or second Saturday in August 9th. And it'll be buy two, get one free. He said you should come back. So we went back, and the store was packed. But, Mac, I managed to pick up some pretty decent Game Boy games, my friend. It was a great trip.
Awesome, man. I have not been able to do any retro game shopping as much as I would have liked to. But I had a bit of a fun thing, a whole adventure since last time we recorded the show a couple weeks ago. Basically, I went back to Utah, visited some family, did a whole basically summer camp for the kids. And we do this thing, you know, the youths, all the nieces and nephews, we do this thing where we try and we make a movie in one day. And usually it's just like a few minutes long. But, like, you know, we start off the day, we get an idea, we put it together, we make a storyboard, sometimes there's even a script involved, then we film it, and then we wrap principal filming on day one, and sometimes I manage to get it edited before dinner time. And
nice.
And that's always a fun little encapsulation, and I think teaches the kids to kind of like work together, and also teaches them, you know, how it's kind of hard to make good stuff, and so hopefully they appreciate good cinema more. But anyway, it's just a fun time, and so I had that chance, but did a lot of traveling as a result, saw some friends, spent some time with some people, and just overall had a real good time.
Love to hear it, man. Love to hear it. Now, would you be curious if I was to tell you what the best game is that I got?
We owe it to those people who are listening to let them know the sweet, awesome haul you got.
Okay, so I'll tell you the 3 games that I got in least exciting to most exciting, I guess. So least exciting, Batman the Animated Series. Phenomenal platformer for the original Game Boy, a game that I wanted, and they had it in stock, so I got it. I was going to get Kirby's Dream Land 2, Matt. And right as I was going to ask them to grab it for me, someone came and snagged it. No big deal. There was a lot of other stuff I wanted. I got Mega Man 3 for the Game Boy. So now I have 1 through 3. I just need 4 and 5. And that's where it starts to get expensive in terms of Game Boy Mega Man games. But I also got a game that many people love, that many people know, that is somewhat rare, and that game is Kid Dracula. One of the better Game Boy platformers ever made. It's a very, very expensive Game Boy game. But Mac, as you know, I'm a baller on a budget.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't get the American version. I managed to get the import Japanese version, which is a $35 game rather than a $300 game. And I got it for free because it was buy two, get one free. So it was a great weekend.
Dude, yeah, great weekend. But be warned, this is the beginning of the pipeline here. You start buying an import game because it's cheap. Next thing you know, you've learned some Japanese symbols and text, and then bam, you're deep into all the anime trains immediately after that. This is how it starts.
Nothing wrong with that. And on that note, Mac, I say we do what we do best and hop right up in that gaming news, my friend. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. Lom, I am always out of the loop. What is new in video gaming?
So much. And as a reminder, this is episode 314, Pot the Pie episode of Two Nerds in a Pod, nerdiest video game podcast in the galaxy. Mac, a lot of weird stuff happening in the gaming community, a lot of it negative. We're not going to cover all of it, but we are going to mention some of it in passing. Shout out to all the people at Bungie, the 17% who lost their jobs. We feel for you, we see you, and we hope you land on your feet. And also, shout out to all the people at Game Informer, Mac. As you know, Game Informer recently shut down.
Mm-hmm.
You go to the webpage, and now there is nothing but a placeholder. And even though we're not going to cover it, I have to ask your opinion as someone who just subscribed to the magazine. Did you even get any issues in the mail, and how do you feel about this situation?
I don't think I received any in the mail.
Interesting.
Did you?
I did not. And so it's going to be interesting to see how they compensate people who have signed up.
Dude, yeah, I
feel like I just asked you this question and you hadn't thought about it yet.
Yeah. You know what? They could make it up to me by giving me easy access to the entire repository. That would be nice.
That would be sweet. Even if it is digital, hey, it's something.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Mac, let's move on. And, there's some stories you just got to share because they're so important and they're about people or things who were so influential, whether it's a sad story or not. And this first one is sad. This is on GameDeveloper.com, and this is about Rachel Lillis. Rachel Lillis, a voice actor best known for playing Jessie and Misty in Pokemon's Anime Club, has passed away from cancer. She was 46. Per voice actor Veronica Taylor, the original dub voice of Ash, Lillis passed on Saturday, August 10th. Taylor went on to describe her as an extraordinary talent, a bright light that shone through her voice, whether speaking or singing. Here's a quick outline of her career. It says, born July 8th, 1978, Lillis landed her first principal voice acting role in 1997's Takagami, Guardians of Darkness. Throughout her career, she provided voices for series such as Revolutionary Girl Utena, Hunter x Hunter, and the 2003 Ninja Turtles cartoon. There's so much more about her, Mac. First of all, rest in peace from the Two Nerds community. We're sad to hear this happened. I know Pokemon very influential in your life, very influential in mine. Let's keep it positive, Mac. Favorite Pokemon memory, whether from gaming or from the cartoon or from the era. Favorite Pokemon memory or a good one.
So I will say that my favorite Pokemon memory is definitely just the delight of playing Red and Blue, having a friend to play and trade with, but more specifically geared to the projects that she was involved in. I loved the Name That Pokemon mystery cards at the commercial breaks, and absolutely loved it, but I enjoyed the animated series and appreciated her contribution to my youth.
Yeah, I've never really been into the Pokemon game, at least not as much as others. I did play like Blue, the original Blue on Game Boy back in the day, but it's not a game that has stuck with me. I will say about the cartoon, at the time, it was something that, at least in my town, was universally beloved. My brother and I hung out all the time as kids, and as we got older, we kind of started to have different interests. He was way more into anime than me. He was into, we were just into different stuff, And one thing that we found in common was Pokemon. That was a show that every day after school, we would love to come watch. Back in the day, you would record stuff and watch it later and whatnot. But it was something that we could really bond over. And I remember hoping that there would be new episodes. I remember being super excited when Ash would catch a new Pokemon or beat a gym master. and the voice acting, superb. I thought so. Huge part of my childhood. Rest in peace.
Absolutely.
Well, Mac, let's move on to another news story, and this one is a couple weeks old, but for whatever reason, we didn't cover it when it came out, probably because of travel and different things we had going on. But this is about a new mod that I'm excited about. This is on IGN.com. Roughly 2 weeks after the release of Fallout London, the big Fallout 4 mod that takes the post-apocalyptic RPG overseas, digital distribution store GOG.com revealed that the expansion-sized mod has become the fastest redeemed game of all time on its platform. In a press release published on Friday, GOG revealed that in the first 24 hours, Fallout London was redeemed more than 500,000 times, taking the crown as the fastest downloaded game of all time on its storefront alone. But the success has been so great, in fact, that the mod's developers announced in an interview with BBC that they're planning to formally start their own game development studio. Though Fallout London is a free mod, as Team Fallout's Dean Carter said in an interview, free doesn't pay the bills. The creators have been accepting donations and seem to be preparing to use that funding to make Team Fallen, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, into a studio. Mac, how do you feel about that news? And the more important question I have for you is, what do you think it would take for a mod to become Game of the Year?
Well, okay, that's a big question. Let me start with the first one that's easier. Could hardly be more proud. There are a few times that we've seen modders actually go on to be their own studio, or even say, like, work directly with the company. A good example was that a few years back there was a Street Fighter Mega Man mashup game, and that was released for, I believe, like the anniversary of both, Street Fighter as well as Mega Man. They had like somewhat combined year celebrations. And that was like a fan game project that Capcom brought on to be, an official release. But also we had the modding scene that brought us the most recent Sonic the Hedgehog games. And that was originally, fan game and modding efforts as well. So, happy to see these guys hopefully join the ranks of enthusiasts turned modders turned honest-to-goodness developers in their own right. But as to what would it take for a mod to become Game of the Year, this year I think it's real tough because there's still some solid competition. Oh no, wait a minute. Baldur's Gate 3 was last year released, right?
Yeah, but there's been good stuff this year. This year has been slower than last year.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
I was just going to say that, no way you stand a chance against Baldur's Gate 3, but that was last year, so I don't know. I feel like Game of the Year probably implicitly does not allow for a mod effort to be considered. I think it's probably no danger for them to be considered, but I think the implication is that it has to be its own development, its own thing. So I don't know as definitionally they would ever allow a mod to be there, but I've seen some darn fine mods.
And that's the thing. I feel like if DLC can be considered, then mods should too. I'm just glancing really quickly at Game of the Year 2024 for IGN.com. And here's what it has. And basically, they put up a poll. You voted between two games, and then whichever game got to the end of your particular poll won. So they have Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which won 78.1% of the duels, as they refer to it. Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erdtree, which is a DLC or an expansion.
True.
So to me, it's super interesting that is in the running.
It's interesting that a DLC and a remake are are both on there.
Right. I wouldn't say that this has been the best year for games. I think the past 3 or 4 we've had really, really good stuff. This one's been good. It's been okay. Helldivers 2, which I've loved, is on there. Dragon's Dogma 2, Hades 2, lots of 2s. Stellar Blade, Rise of Ronin, Paper Mario, and the Thousand Year Door, Prince of Persia, and we'll stop with number 10, which is Like a Dragon, Infinite Wealth. So, Mac, it's interesting because I also just looked up, what are some of the best mods of all time? Counter-Strike, a mod, right? We kind of forget that. Half-Life 3 mod. I believe that Dota 2, I believe, was a mod.
100%, yeah.
point is, there's been some really, really good mods. I mean, Counter-Strike is still a huge competitive game, and now we have a second Counter-Strike as well. So, point being, to win Game of the Year, challenging no matter what, but I feel like it's really just going to come down to notoriety. And if a game like Fortnite that's free, or a game like Apex can be in contention for Game of the Year awards, maybe not Game of the Year, but in that award spectrum, why couldn't Fallout London? And it's the fastest downloaded game on GOG of all time. So I would love to see it get some recognition on that front. We'll see what happens. Support those you love. If you like this game, throw them a few bucks. That's what I have to say about it.
Yeah, please do. We could, what with Microsoft gobbling up as many studios as possible, we could use some more fresh blood.
We sure could. And Mac, I don't know how much time we'll talk about this last one, but I do want to at least mention that the Borderlands movie did release this past weekend.
Oh, yeah.
And it's having a tough go on IGN.com. By the way, I don't know if I read the people's name who wrote those last two articles. Let's make sure we do that. The article about Rachel Lillis on Game Developer was by Justin Carter. And the article about Fallout London was written by Taylor Lyles. I think I may have forgotten to mention those. So this last one is also on IGN.com and written by Adele Anchors Range. And they write, Eli Roth's Borderlands movie had a devastating box office debut amid negative reviews and fan reaction, but Gearbox CEO Randy Pitchford has found the silver lining. The film pulled in just $8.8 million in the US and Canada in its opening, plus $7.7 million overseas, for a global total of $16.5 million. That's bad. As a point of comparison, the incredibly successful Deadpool and Wolverine pulled in $96 million on its opening day in the US alone. Sources tell IGN that a significant portion of Borderlands' $115 million budget and $30 million marketing and distribution costs are already covered by international pre-sales. So it says Pitchford worked as an executive producer on the film and isn't letting the underwhelming critical and commercial response get him down. He took to Twitter to say, so what you're saying is, this is what he says, quote, so what you're saying is you like what my friends and I do with our Borderlands video games even more than you like what some of the biggest and best cast and crew filmmakers on the planet have done. I'm super flattered. We're working extra hard for you on what's next. And he has 4 as FOUR, which probably means Borderlands 4. I'm a Borderlands fan.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how much you're into it. I'll just say my opinion first. I'm extremely disappointed that this movie is not doing well. Because it's not Super Mario Brothers, which is not niche. Super Mario is like a household name. That movie can do well or do poorly, and it's not going to affect the future of video game movies as much as this. To get a Borderlands or a Splinter Cell or a Halo show or movie that doesn't do well bodes very, very badly for the future of niche video game movies and shows. And I'm sad about that.
Yeah, no, I agree. But on the flip side, we do have the wildly successful and popular Fallout TV series that was done by Amazon just earlier this year.
Great point. I like that, dude. I like that.
So I think there's still cause for hope. But yeah, it is a little bit of unfortunate that we've got this one, because for a while there, I mean, we were getting flop after flop after flop with Yule Boll at the helm of video game movies, and then we just started getting bangers. I mean, okay, to be fair, the Uncharted movie wasn't so good, but it wasn't huge flop territory like where it looks like the Borderlands movie is going. And as somebody who appreciates Borderlands but doesn't have all that much, I've played the first one and I've played some of the second, but that's about as far as I got. I still plan on watching it though, because I want to know if it's a stinker for myself.
So one comment in the chat from our man G, he writes, Borderlands deserved to fail, and I'm glad it did. When you put Eli Roth in charge of anything, it's a dumpster fire. Games, movies, life itself would a measure. Okay, I'm not going to read the rest of this. I don't like to see anyone's creative work fail unless they have bad intentions.
I think we should all take a moment, just be like, when was the last time I tried to put some art together? And was it easy? Was it even possible? I think through trying it yourself, you gain an appreciation for it's not easy to make a hit. And,
No.
I mean, and I think to put it all on the hands of, I don't even know who Eli Roth is, but to hang it on the entire head of one person is disingenuous. And I shouldn't have started by calling out Yule Bowl, but he certainly had multiple data points of bad. So, just saying.
I'm as guilty as anyone. I have not seen the movie yet. For the sake of time, that's been news.
All right. Well, let's take a little look into the past with some video game history. I want to start in 1995. This last week, we saw a little something called The Legend of Zelda. The BS Legend of Zelda had an abbreviation in front of it. And that BS stands for something called the Broadcast Satellaview. Lom, have you ever heard of the Broadcast Satellaview?
Only from you, man. Only from you.
Feel comfortable trying to tell the viewers some of what you remember?
Yeah, so my memory is that it was effectively one of the first internet-connected gaming devices that allowed you to download a game or a demo of a game, but I feel like it could only be played for a certain amount of time, and then it was no longer available to play. So you effectively could enjoy it, and I don't remember if there was like online leaderboards or scores you were supposed to beat and different objectives. But once it was gone, and we no longer have access to those games.
Mr. Nice Guy, you're like 99% of the way there. It was one of the early ones. Sega had their Sega channel, and of course, Nintendo had their Broadcast Satellaview. In the mid-90s, of course, they tried to make digital distribution happen. And much like Fetch, it just was difficult to make happen. Where the Sega channel did coaxial cables, the Broadcast Satellaview did satellite stuff. They purchased time on a satellite, sent it over the air to their Satellaview SNES add-on. So kind of like how the Sega Genesis docked onto the Sega CD, there was a sort of, docking of the Super Nintendo onto the Satellaview. And the BS Legend of Zelda, or Broadcast Satellaview Legend of Zelda, was a port of the original Legend of Zelda. Basically SNES graphics with a whole bunch of additional add-ons. And it came in 4 parts. And just like you were saying, Mr. Nice Guy, it was playable for a brief period of time. And that playtime was basically the 1 hour of broadcast time. And then you'd have to wait till the next week when the next part was uploaded. But that next part would overwrite the data that you had from the previous bit. Nintendo, so far as we know, never kept the original data, and so any of that stuff just kind of was lost to the ether. And like much of video game history, one of the only reasons why we have the game data, because you can, or at least you could, that's a whole nother issue, download basically the SNES ROM file with all 4 parts attached, is because preservationists tracked down the cartridges that still held part 1 or part 4 or part 2 or part 3 and stitched all of this together to a complete game data from its parts. Now, there are still some things that are completely lost because they did a thing where they had like live voice acting instructions being given over the air as part of the broadcast, and that stuff was only transmitted but not able to be actually captured on the cartridge. That was purely ephemeral over the air. So there were components of this that were like, that were saved or saved in some sense, and some that were completely and totally lost. And for us in the US, we never got it at all because it was just a Japan only thing with the Broadcast Satellaview. So it's definitely interesting, a piece of gaming history that thanks to basically ROM hackers, we still have some, but it is touch and go for a bit there. But yeah, Mr. Nice Guy, your memory spot on, dude. Well, one other title, Mr. Nice Guy, that I wonder if you might have heard of. from 1999.
Tell me more.
Yeah, from the PC, a little game called System Shock 2. Any experience with this one?
Not one that I played at the time, but I know that maybe a year, 2 years ago, System Shock, the original, was remade on Steam.
Indeed.
But tell me more, Mac.
A little bit of pedigree behind it, right? Kind of reveals a lot of things that might be a bit more in the experience here. Is that two little studios named Looking Glass Studios and Irrational Games put this title back together in the 90s. It's a moody first-person shooter focused on questions about reality, consciousness, and everything. Imagine, if you will, a station in space that everything's gone sidewise. Maybe there's a computer controlling everything that's gone rogue, and you've got droids, and you've got essentially zombies, and that's System Shock 2. But also, System Shock 2 is one of the reasons that we got BioShock. And that's not me just saying it, that, BioShock, took its cues off of System Shock 2. It's like, number one, the devs themselves said that BioShock was meant to be a spiritual successor to System Shock 2. But also, Irrational Studios was the people who made BioShock, and they were also the ones who teamed for making System Shock 2. So if anybody knew how to make a game in that style, it was the very people who made it in the first place. And they brought BioShock. And BioShock is a game that I thoroughly love. Moody, fantastic, amazing. I enjoyed it my first time around. Also, there is one other little interesting, I guess, footnote of history that I think is worth pointing out, is that there have been a lot of long-running game awards. The ones that are most prominent now, such as the Game Awards, were only started back in 2012. Game Developers' Choice Awards started in '88. Golden Joystick started in '83, and all these very long-running Game Awards all had this weird thing where they took a vacation in the late '90s and early 2000s, and they just stopped doing everything for a whole bunch of years. Golden Joystick stopped in '97, came back in '02. Game Developers' Choice Award took a hiatus in the mid-'80s, came back in 2001. Anyway, there was this period in the '90s where there were no game awards, per se. So, every single news outlet had their own Game of the Year.
Yep.
Of all of those, 7 of the big outlets decided that System Shock 2 was Game of the Year for 1999. So while it never got an official crown, it certainly got as close to an unofficial crown as one could possibly hope for in the 90s when there were no crowns to hound out. So yeah, System Shock 2, fantastic. And they're even doing a remake of it as well right now. So something to look forward to as well, if you want to experience it with some more modern sensibilities. But anyway, that has just been a little bit of wildness, a little bit of craziness, a little bit of history.
Love it, love it, love it. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for our next segment, which is our Indie Game of the Week. A segment where Mac and I tell you about a game that may deserve more attention and let you know if it deserves your attention. Mac, this week we have one that I am excited to talk about and excited to hear your thoughts on. This one is called Ogu and the Secret Forest. Explore the wonderful world with baby Ogu. Ogu and the Secret Forest is a 2D adventure game with hand-drawn characters and various types of puzzles. Befriend bouncy characters and defeat strange creatures to unravel the mystery of the charming world. Currently released July 29th, 2024, so it just came out. In terms of reviews, it has 823 reviews on Steam, sitting at very positive. Developers are Moonlab Studio and Sinkhole Studio. The publisher is Sinkhole Studio. They did provide this game for us for review, so Mac and I both got codes. It will not affect our opinion. And the current price on Steam is $24.99. Mac, what genre would you say this game falls into, and what were your thoughts on the game?
I don't know the name for the genre, but I would say a solid A Link to the Past styling.
Yep.
I'm really enjoying the game. I have not completed it, and part of that's because there is a lot of content here. Now, a lot of that content does happen to be fetch questy. So if you like the style of quests that you would get from a game kind of like Stardew Valley, especially the community center stuff, then there is a lot of that type of flavor to the quests. You're getting side quests from everybody. Some of them are mainline, some of them are big side quests like get all these things to exhibit in the museum. A lot of stuff like that. But at its heart, you go around with your butterfly net and you go swinging it at enemies. Add on a little bit of dodging here, a few different types of, shall we say, movement tech that's come to the forefront, and still a little bit more for me to explore. But yeah, I'm glad that it does call out specifically the hand-drawn feel to it, because if it didn't say that in the thing, I was definitely going to bring up that these hand-drawn graphics look particularly cozy. It feels cozy, except when you're in with a boss. Then it feels pretty frantic.
Yeah, I will say this. I liked the game, and one of the first things that you talked about is one of the biggest gripes that I had with the game. Let's start with the negative.
Okay.
Why not? The amount of content is good. I like a game that has a lot of content and that has some side quests, but you didn't really have the option to say no to a side quest. At least a lot of the ones that I came across. You walk past someone and you talk to them, and they're like, "Hey, will you go do this?" And it's immediately added to your list of things to do. Which is not how I like to play games. I like to talk to an NPC, and they say, "Oh, my brother's missing. He went up the hill to ski and never came back. Can you go find him?" And I can either say yes or I can say no, because I don't want my interface or even my pause menu to be filled up with a ton of quests that I'm not interested in completing. Now, the positive is that as you started completing these quests and you would naturally do them, it would let you know, "Oh, hey, you just found such and such thing that corresponds with such and such quest," which I think is a very, very intuitive way of doing things. The other thing I liked is that you didn't have to go into the menu and select a quest in order to be able to work on it. So the game is smart in that sense. I, too, really like the graphics and I really like the gameplay. And I like games where the puzzle solving makes me feel smart, and this game did that. The art style almost has a little bit of like a watered down Hollow Knight feel, with more color, and I really, really like that. Mac, I have made, a sincere effort to find different genres of game for us to play. I feel like we review a lot of Metroidvanias, we review a lot of platformers, and 8-bit, 16-bit type games. I feel like this is a game that stands out in some ways from the stuff we're traditionally doing, and I really like that.
Yeah. No, it was a great palate cleanser, if you will, from all the Metroidvanias. But yeah, no, I like it. It has good, solid roots, and it works pretty well. I don't know. There are some games that I know I'm going to get every achievement, and I don't know as I'm going to try and get every achievement in this game, but I know that I do want to complete the main quest line.
Very, very beautiful game. And tight mechanics. Like, I didn't have any bug issues. I didn't have any crashes, which I feel like this is a bigger game than you would think by looking at the art style. The art style almost implies, like you said, that it's cozy, and it's laid back, and it's going to be tiny and compact, but it's huge. There's a lot to do.
Oh, yeah.
And so the last two questions I have for you, Mac, before we move on: price point, what do you think in terms of quality and content? And number two, how would you rank it on the Two Nerds scale?
It's good, solid quality. I would love it if it was at around the $20 mark instead of the $25 mark. but I feel like there is enough content to certainly justify the sort of, minimum $1 an hour for the content that we sort of really like that point. I haven't put that much time into it yet to make that. I think I'm still somewhere in the 15 to 16 hours because I couldn't take my Steam Deck with me on the trip the past couple of weeks, so wasn't able to put any good time in. But I do think I'm going to feel as though that $25 mark is justified. As for the scale, I really like this. It checks a lot of boxes. I think it does try to cram a little bit too much into one package, but maybe I'll feel differently by the time I've completed it. I'll say 4 out of 5 for me.
Yeah, I should have gone first because I was really on the fence of, do I want to give this a 3.5 or do I want to give it a 4? And to me, that's the difference between a C and a B. Based on the amount of content alone, I am with you and I give it a 4. It's an excellent game that I can recommend. I played it on Steam Deck as well. Like you, I cannot recommend it as easily at $25. And when I look at the market and I see stuff that costs $25, that's borderline AA rated game.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than a AAA rated game, like there's probably some AA rated games that you can get from the $25 to $40 rank. And I don't consider this to be in that territory. This is very much an indie, an excellent indie that, by the way, deserves way more attention than it is getting. So that's my thoughts. Mac, anything you want to say before we move on?
Excellent game. We're appreciative, and I'm looking forward to finishing it off in the near future.
Check it out. Link in the chat.
All right. Well, now we turn to a crowdfunding project that's trying to get off of the ground. We call this Kick or Kickstart, and I have posted a link in the chat. You may be able to divine some things from the very link's title itself. This is called Epic X. Okay, so normally I don't always do this, but sometimes I see a project, and I need to emphasize that not every crowdfunding project is on the level.
What do you mean by that?
I am not entirely convinced of the genuineness of this product or of this project bringing a product to market for some reasons that I'm going to go into. But when I do see something that I feel like might be trying to take people for a ride, I do like to call it out. Just as an FYI, normally I try to focus on good stuff rather than stuff that I don't care for on the Kickstarter thing. But this one, right, is coming direct out of Chicago, Illinois. It's a Kickstarter project that is pushing a piece of hardware, notably a touchscreen display, Android-powered, to justify the support, really, of a subscription software, which is the Epic X paid app, valued at $20 per month. And on the hardware side of things, the deliverable that they're pushing out here is essentially 3 different sizes of large Android tablets, ranging from 24 inches to 32 to 43-inch screens, and at the highest tier, an additional wooden gaming table compatible with the 43-inch screen. But most of the Kickstarter's runtime is dedicated to the amazing innovations that the AI-powered app is going to bring to your tabletop gaming nights. No need for D&D prep, you let the AI handle that. No need for custom maps, you let the AI handle that. But my specific feelings about AI, its promises, its failures to deliver on promises, and so on, all aside, here's what's really interesting about the product. First of all, it's only running for 72 hours, so you better get on this now, kids. There's this mantra, Mr. Nice Guy, in information security, right? That you should never touch anything that tells you to act now, supplies are running out, because it's a recipe to get punked.
Right.
Don't do anything with emails that say you must respond immediately. Don't do that. That's all phishing things. So do I have evidence that this is a scam? Not really, but laying it all out, this is the first Kickstarter project. There is no online presence for this game, or for these people. There is no already crafted application, no Epic X paid app that we can test. There's a claim to have a talented team of developers, but there's no record of them or who they're working with. $10,000 is way too low for them to be putting out their own bespoke tech. So at best, it would be, if it is in fact legit, it's just going to be a coat of paint on existing products. And they have to get this thing funded now, in time to ship for Christmas and New Year's, which is no way on earth is that ever happening. All of this taken together, I don't know how much of this is absolutely smoke and mirrors, but like enough of it is smoke and mirrors that this is the type of thing that if you ever see something like this on a crowdfunding project, I feel like you should run the opposite direction because they're just looking to take your money. And yeah. So, Mr. Nice Guy, I'm so sorry. I don't know as I've left any room for you to dunk.
No, I have so much to say, and as a reminder, Mac does not send these to me in advance, so we can get genuine reactions, just like how I don't send him news stories in advance for the show.
Yeah.
So there's a few red flags. Number one is that they only have 2 backers, and they're already 32% of the way there. So somehow the first 2 backers, one of them it looks like chose the $6.99 tier, but the other one must have chosen one of the $1,000+ tiers, which I find very suspect. That was probably them doing it themselves or their mom, who they gave money to do so, making that purchase.
Thanks, Mom.
Yeah, right. Watching the video, these people are master marketers because the video looks really, really, really good.
Yeah.
I'm actually really impressed, and I liked the way that I felt as I watched it, but, clearly there's a lot of holes in this. Mac, I think that we'll reach a point as AI becomes more relevant in gaming where we need to be able to draw the line between what is AI and what is procedural generation. You think about a game like Dead Cells or a game like, what's that game where you're digging? I can't remember.
SteamWorld Dig?
Yeah, SteamWorld Dig, and there's others, but a lot of games make procedurally generated levels. Do we consider that AI or do we consider that the programming of the game? And so when I look at a claim on this Kickstarter that says levels can be generated, maps can be generated in 2.2 seconds, is that AI or is that your programming? And I think that it's an important thing to differentiate. Don't mislead consumers to believe that artificial intelligence is going online and looking at D&D stuff and saying, hey, here's a map that people would like to play, when in reality, it's just something that you programmed it to do. Those are 2 very different things, in my opinion. So there's a lot of smoke and mirrors here. There's a lot of things that I consider holes in their pitch. And it'll be interesting to see that argument as we move more towards AI, procedurally generated or actual.
And I think I'm not the biggest fan of subscription services for software in the first place. But also, this hardware is ostensibly just to push their software, of which we get actually no example of. And Ishmobile, resident tech expert, does say, good point, Lom, a lot of what we are calling AI is just the repackaging of current tech and not actually AI. But AI's the buzzword, so we have to use it. Just like literally everything was getting the blockchain treatment in 2021, now literally everything's getting the AI treatment.
Mac, one other thing I want to say about this, I know we're kind of going long on the episode, but this is such an interesting concept to me. You already hit on the buy now issue. 72 hours for a Kickstarter, that limits your chance of success. Why would you, with Kickstarter giving you 30 days to collect money, say, nah, you know what, we just want 3 days? No one would say that.
Well, it's so they can get it in your hands in time for Christmas, Lon.
Yeah, then start working on it with what funding you have before the Kickstarter closes. So to me, it's just absurd. One thing you said that I really liked, and I was going to say this, I'll elaborate, is repackaging of current tech. How much of this could be accomplished with an iPad or with an Android tablet that you already have, and with other programs that are already out there, like Roll20? Whenever I'm thinking about buying a piece of tech, I have to ask myself, is this derivative of something that I already have? how many ways do I really need to watch Netflix? I have a phone. We have an iPad in the house. I have a computer. I have a TV. Do I really need a laptop too? Or can I find a way to make what I already have work for the purpose I'm trying to accomplish? And I think for people who are doing tabletop, probably they have an iPad. And probably a lot of these things that this claims to do, or that the software claims to do, could be accomplished with their existing hardware in their home.
I could hardly agree with you more. It certainly is the case.
So, Mac, what are your thoughts? You kicking or you kickstart?
I am definitely kicking, Mr. Nice Guy. There is nothing here that I think warrants anybody's dollar, much less yours and mine. As somebody who crawls Kickstarter at least once a week looking for stuff, when I see something that's taking up the air, gotta call it out.
Agree 100%. Kicking this for the reasons I've already stated.
And that's been Kick or Kickstart from us.
Nice. Well, now it's time for Nerd Flex.
Woo-hoo.
A segment where you, the viewers, try to stump the host. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. If you're here live, you have a job to do. Get your multiple choice gaming related questions in the chat, Mac, and I use nothing but our noggins to try to answer them. And we also have a test bank of questions that we love to use with randomly generated questions from a bank, right? It's not AI. It's not procedurally generated. They were put into this test bank. We click random. It brings up a card. We try to answer, and that's where we're going to start. Here's the first question, Mac. It's an FPS question, which I know is your favorite genre. How can one unlock BioShock Infinite's 1999 mode before finishing the game?
So, again, we do not coordinate. This is perfectly random. Even though we talked about BioShock earlier, that's nothing. It's just chance. I have not played BioShock Infinite. I did not know there was a 1999 mode, and no idea how to do it, but, I'll guess something crazy. But do you have any ideas?
No, part of me thought maybe you have to have played the other two.
I'm going to say it's something like you have to either, blow up an island or you have to, jump off of an island. But I feel like it has to do with dropping something.
Yeah, I'm going to guess that you play the game pacifist.
Ooh, interesting.
Up to a certain point, and maybe there's a boss that you beat or something you do stealth wise, and then you unlock it. And if I get this right, people are gonna think I cheated, but I actually think that could be it.
I love it. Let's see.
Oh my gosh. Okay, this is an awesome answer, and it's not what either of us said, but it's by entering the Konami code.
Oh,
that's brilliant.
That's really good. I wish I had thought of that.
Hey, we learned something new, and that's part of what this segment is about.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, next question, Mac. Which Zelda game is the only one to feature experience points and leveling up? This is a great question.
Well, as far as I'm aware, that's Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link. Because I remember switching between magic, attack, and health.
I was unsure. And then when you said that, I remembered Zelda 2 did have RPG elements. So let's go with Zelda 2 on the NES. Final answer. Yeah, Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link. Mac, well done.
Well done, us.
And for our third question, this is almost too easy. But hey, we got a special round.
Woo! Special
that
round.
came up. Name 2 video games based on an anime. This is a timely question.
Oh, yeah.
Not particularly challenging, but it's very timely.
Indeed. So I guess we're talking about games that came after the anime. Initial D was a manga, then an anime, then a game. So I'm going to throw Initial D in there. And of course, special rounds, we just try and name as many as we can, have to meet the minimum to get it right.
Yeah.
Gosh, that's the only one I can think of at the moment. What about you?
You're kidding, right? What about Pokemon, dude?
Pokemon, I'm pretty darn sure, was a game long before it had an animated.
I'm pretty sure that is not the case.
Really? Okay.
I'm pretty sure that the anime was out before the game. And that in Japan, because remember, it came out in Japan well before America, and then it was translated.
Of course, yeah.
So I'm going to go Pokemon as one. I could be wrong. I mean, there's some that are obvious to me, like Digimon and Yu-Gi-Oh! And all those types of things.
Now, Digimon, I know the game came first.
Okay, fair.
You know, you could be right about Pokemon. It might have been anime first.
Yeah, there's another game, and it's funny because Tiankum, who I went game shopping with this weekend, is he's collecting like Xbox 360.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a game called Afro Samurai for the Xbox 360 that is based on anime. So I know that is one.
Depending upon how we cut it, if Avatar: The Last Airbender counts as an anime, then we've got those games that came after it, and the Legend of Korra game that came after that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I think that's plenty. Let's flip and see which ones it has listed. Dude, okay, so it named some of the ones you said.
Ooh.
Oh, wow. So Initial D, arcade game. We didn't talk about Dragon Ball.
Oh, Dragon Ball, of course.
And then it says the One Piece series. And Mac, you were actually right. It says Pokemon was a game first. That's so interesting. I thought that it came out in Japan before it was a game.
I'm glad that's 2 out of 3. Not too shabby.
Yeah, we'll take it. That's been Nerdflex.
All right, well, now we turn to a little bit of legalese.
Legally.
I am not a lawyer. I just kind of play one on a podcast sometimes. And Mr. Nice Guy, I want to update you and everybody else on the end of BCG versus GameStop.
Ooh.
This was something we talked about way back in episode 221. Here's what we know. Back in the early 2010s, GameStop was riding somewhat high, and then along about 2017, they started their slow decline with respect to stock prices, that is. Now, not making what they used to, they started closing up shops, and in 2018, they went through not one, not two, but 3 different CEOs, and there was some internal talk that GameStop was a sinking ship. Now, in late 2019, they bring on this BCG, Boston Consulting Group, to be an advisor and to try and help them turn things around. At the time, the CEO of GameStop is a man named Dan Kaufman, and he leaves in June 2020. We, of course, are probably all somewhat familiar that in January 2021 is when we get the famous holding of GameStop stock, and some people on Reddit and online share the knowledge that there are several hedge funds that have specifically bet on GameStop's demise, and basically took out huge bets on the failure of GameStop, and that motivated a lot of people to buy, up those shares of GameStop and hold on to it, increasing demand, and therefore the price went up, forcing some of those hedge funds who were being viewed as the baddies, I will not offer my opinions beyond that, but forcing some of them to lose money, hee ha ha hee, offered without commentary, he says. So, the crux of the BCG claims were that they were contracted to save GameStop and that they came up with a cunning 10-point plan, and in return, they would be compensated for helping save the company. Now, there are some interesting things, like they said that BCG's fees were based upon the projections, not the actual profit improvements, which sounds a little bit like a red flag. And this one's from paragraph 23 of the original filing. BCG's fees were not capped for any profit improvement other than one of the 10, which was limited to $40 million in compensation each year. So these are some of the things that sound a little bit hinky. Anyway, based on everything that we know, it kind of sounds like Dan Kaufman signed an unconscionably wild contract with BCG, with these people, before leaving the company and moving down the road. And when we comes right down to it, we know enough about what happened with GameStop's sort of steadying the ship instead of, cratering, really has nothing to do with the consulting company at all. And if they, of course, were really, if they were really on the job since August of 2019 and they were that good at doing their job, why didn't it happen until, 2021? All this is there. But all of that to be said, were the case's facts, and there was an attempt to dismiss in March that it survived, and the judge decided that BCG had demonstrated that they had done, quote, just enough work, quote, to satisfy a judge that this was not, in fact, a completely frivolous claim. And so we were just about ready to start on depositions. And there was a jury trial set for this very month. There had been discovery. We were getting people under oath. The jury trial was starting this month. I was so excited because we were finally going to get into the meat of this and find out. The judge had even decided how many hours each side was going to get to make their case in court before the jury. And then they settled. As we know, Mac despises these types of settlements because it means that there are so many questions that will probably, for us, remain permanently unanswered. But at least we can say that GameStop and BCG have decided to settle. I don't know who decided what, who was pushing for it, but it will probably remain a mystery from here on out, and that's unfortunate. But at least we don't have to worry about what's going to happen with this BCG v GameStop. And that is the end of the chapter, at least for now. So, not satisfying, but that's legalese for you.
It's wild, man. A lot of people are trying to save GameStop, or were trying to save GameStop.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it was strictly based on nostalgia. And I had a conversation with a friend about this weekend. GameStop is not what it used to be. It's definitely a shell of its former self. It's now, they actually have some retro games now. But it's less of a game store and more of almost like a trinket store. Like, they sell T-shirts. They sell plushies.
Yeah.
They sell little Mario shaped candies. They have trinkets. Like, it's not what it used to be. And I honestly wonder if the people who work there are really, really into games, or just really into nerd culture, or just really looking for a job. Because it's not what it used to be.
But I will say that I was hoping that we would get, like we do with most Discovery, we get to see the skeletons in the closet. We get to peek behind the curtain and find out what's going on. And sometimes, don't get me wrong, sometimes the settlements end in good things. Like when Epic shells out $500 million so that we don't look into their emails. And stuff like that. That's probably good things all around, probably. But still, there is this part of me that just wants to know what's in those emails.
Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. Before we go, we have one last segment called What We've Been Watching and What We've Been Playing, where we talk about just that, the cool, nerdy stuff we've been into across all platforms, the stuff we've been playing on consoles and on tablets and on phones and other handhelds and physical consoles. And the stuff we've been reading, whether it's nerdy or otherwise. And if you're here live, you have a job to do. Let us know in the chat what you've been watching and playing, because we're always looking for more stuff. Mac, what you been into the past week?
Well, I watched a little movie from 1944 called Gaslight. And frankly, I am surprised that I'd never seen it before. And I'm surprised that it's not like standard watching, because it holds up really well. I won't say anything about it because it's a bit of a mystery thriller, but you might, from the common parlance, have an idea of the subject matter. But it's good stuff. Let's see, what else have I been watching? Never Stop Blowing Up, that's a Dimension 20 thing. As for playing, I've been playing a game called Creeper World. It's the first one because basically I needed something non-internet connected as I was flying and doing some other things. And so that was my option. Great trip down memory lane and nostalgia. And of course, Ogu and the Secret Forest that we were playing as well.
Nice. Well, Mac, I mentioned before the show that I was watching something, and I'm curious if you've seen it. Now, I have not had Netflix for a while, but by the way, I've been doing way more comedy lately. I forgot to mention that.
Awesome.
On the front end. And as I've been doing way more comedy, I've also had the desire to watch way more comedy. Obviously not to get ideas, but just because I love comedy. And so I watched Chappelle's recent special. I had not seen it yet, his newest one. Wasn't my favorite, even though he's one of my favorite comedians. But I also watched, Mac, John Mulaney's recent special, or I started it. It's called Baby J.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen that?
I have not.
Now, I seem to remember when we lived in the same city that we got together when one of his new specials dropped and we watched it.
We did,
Is that
yeah.
a memory that I'm imagining?
No.
Yeah, so John Mulaney, brilliant writer, and I won't really say much about his current special. But I would recommend it. I thought it was funny, and I also thought that it was insightful into some of the things that he's been through. So I enjoyed that. My wife and kids and I just watched the movie Wonder last night, which was a phenomenal movie. We really enjoyed that. About that young man who has a facial, I don't know what the right way to say it, like a facial disability, and he has challenges in school. Great family movie. And then we've continued on our binge of 90s movies. And this past week, Mac, we watched Rookie of the Year. Not your favorite?
No, Rookie of the Year. I actually watched it a few months ago with my nephews. Holds up surprisingly well.
Yeah, it's good. And as far as playing, we have a lot of indies in the backlog that we will be reviewing over the next few weeks. Obviously, I played Ogu. Picked up Kid Dracula, like I mentioned, so I played some of that. And then a little bit of Fortnite with my son this evening when I got home. Mac, what are people into in the chat?
Chat's a little bit quiet, but Galvatron comes through. He's been watching Deadpool and Wolverine and apparently enjoys that very much. Cobra Kai Season 6, which I guess is out now, has been playing Unicorn Overlord, Evil West, Hogwarts Legacy, and Double Dragon Gaiden, Rise of the Dragoons.
I gotta say about Cobra Kai, I really liked the first couple seasons.
Mm-hmm.
There's the part where the kids get in a fight in the school, and it's like a full-on ninja brawl in the school.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen it, Mac, but at that point, I couldn't take the show seriously anymore. It was a little too over the top.
You know, I will throw this out about Cobra Kai. One of my favorite moments was when Mama LaRusso is just like, oh, okay, you know what? We're going to go to the cops. See? Problem solved. And she goes to the cops, and it solves none of the problems. If anything, it makes things worse. And then she's just like, okay, fine, settle your stuff with karate. And I just loved everything about that. Because I'd been like shouting at the television because they can hear me. Anyway, yeah, I can only imagine where it is now.
We're going to start a Cobra Kai podcast. The other thing I got to say, and if we can edit this out if we need to, is LaRusso and I forget the other guy's name, his nemesis.
Johnny?
Johnny. It's like they're constantly like, are we friends or are we enemies? Let's work together. No, let's not work together. And it's just a wild, almost like they could have trimmed the fat off and just done all of this in 2 seasons. But episodes pay. Mac, why don't you take us home, my friend?
Welcome to Sleeping Cobras, the newest Cobra Kai podcast on your podcast feed. Thanks, everybody, for coming out to Two Nerds in a Pod. We appreciate you being here and hope you've had at least as much fun listening as we had making it and researching it. Feel free to join us if you care for the live show on twitch.tv/Two Nerds in a Pod. That's with the number 2 at 7 o'clock Pacific, 9 p.m. Central on Tuesdays, and catch us on your podcast platform of choice. If you happen to be here on behalf of the Podcast Awards, thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoy and rank us highly. And to all of you, just remember, be excellent to each other and keep it nerdy. We'll see you next time. Bye.
See you later. Be kind.